Hey guys, Andy here, and today I'm going to teach you how to use compression in Adobe Premiere Pro. So, with that said, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, I recorded a quick little test video just so you guys can get an idea of what we're dealing with here as far as dealing with compression versus non-compression, and then single band compression versus multi-band compression. So this is just a quick little 1-minute video, just me talking about rando stuff. And before we begin the compression and stuff, I want to give you guys a chance to listen to what the audio sounds like before we do anything. Now, this is recorded on my Zoom H2n mic with no low cut, no compression, no filtering of any kind. This is just straight from the mic, as raw as it gets. So, let's have a listen. Nothing on my Zoom H2n mic. I'm just talking straight into the mic pretty much. It's about a foot away from me, and sorry about the bump. But anyway, the mic is about a foot away from me, kind of angling at the left side, so to be... Okay, like I said, this is a pretty good mic. It records very well, but the audio does sound rather low. So we'll go ahead and add some compression to it, which will give it a nice balanced sound. So we'll go into here to Effects, go to Audio Effects, and we'll scroll down, and we'll first deal with single band compression. So we'll go to single band, drag it onto the audio waveform here, release, and now we'll go to our effects workstation up here, single band compressor, go to edit, and it brings up this window right here. When I was first learning how compression works, I looked it up on a bunch of different websites and watched a bunch of YouTube tutorial videos, and they gave this very long scientific explanation of what compression does to the audio waveform. And after watching and reading and all this kind of stuff, I still didn't know what it did. So it took a couple more YouTube videos for me to kind of get it, but I'll give the very simple explanation to you guys here. And if you'd like to know more about how compression affects the audio waveform, please, by all means, the information is out there. But I'll just give you the layman's version of it. So in the single band compressor window, we have several settings here. And the first one is threshold. Now what this is it's basically the point in the audio waveform where the compressor starts to kick in. So think of it as like a ceiling. So you're jumping and jumping, and then you bump your head on the ceiling. So that point where you bump your head on the ceiling is where the compressor takes place, or begins to take into effect. So I usually like to set it at about -20 to -25 decibels, usually. So say for instance, it's -20 decibels. So once the audio waveform gets loud enough to cross the -20 decibel threshold, then the compressor kicks in. So that leads us to the next thing here, which is the ratio, which is the amount of compression or attenuation that the waveform is given once it passes the threshold. So typical ratios you may see is like 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, upwards of 10-to-1 is the typical ratios. So what this is think of it in reverse. So instead of 10-to-1, it's 1-to-10. So every time the audio waveform passes the -20 decibel threshold, it gets cut into either a tenth, a fifth, a fourth, a third, or even in half. The idea is, behind compression, just think of it as if you had the physical waveform in your hand, if it was a tangible object, and you had it in between your hands and you were literally squeezing it, or compressing it, if you will. And that's basically what a compressor does, is it makes the loud parts of the waveform quieter, so that way it's more even with the quieter parts. And so it does this through the threshold and ratio. Now, the other two things here, attack and release, beyond the presets, I typically don't deal with these too often, but I'll give you a basic analogy of how these work. So attack, if you imagine like a door or something like that. So attack is the speed at which you open the door, and release is the speed at which you close the door. So you could have something that kicks in really fast, or just kind of gradually opens, and vice versa. So I typically don't mess with these beyond the preset settings, like I said, because I think they do a pretty good job at it. But if you'd like to mess with it, please be my guest. And the last little thing we have here is the output gain. Now, with all this compression, the audio waveform is going to appear to sound louder. So what I do is I usually put a gain cut here at around -3 to -5. So in this case, we'll err on the side of caution and put a -5 decibel cut here. So I typically do this to avoid peaking, which means that the audio waveform goes beyond the 0 decibel range. And then it starts to distort, and it just doesn't sound very good. So that's called clipping. Okay, so I found a good preset for this particular waveform here. It's called Vocal Booster. Because the audio is very quiet, this does a really good job at letting you really hear the difference when it's turned on and off. So we're first gonna play it with it off, and then I'm just gonna turn it on and just kind of toggle it so you guys can hear the difference. So here we go. The mic is about a foot away from me, kind of angling at the left side, so it'd be this side right here. It's about here-ish, about a foot away from my mouth, and I'm just talking directly at you guys. So that way you guys get a nice little test clip, and you can hear the difference between non-compression and compression, and also single band compression versus multi-band compression. So with that, okay, so that is just a quick little taste of what single band compression can do. So we'll go ahead and now I'll show you how multi-band compression works. So we'll go ahead and go back into our effects window here, go to audio effects, and we'll scroll down to multi-band compression, and we'll go ahead and drag it onto the waveform here. Go to our effects workspace, and it's right there. I already deleted the single band compression so that way we can work on this, and it's laid out about the same, but there's a whole mess of new buttons and new stuff for us to mess with. So now I gotta explain to you guys the difference between single band compression and multi-band compression. So with single band compression, it basically compresses the entire waveform. And then what multi-band compression does is it compresses the waveform based off of frequency bands. So you have your lows, your low mids, your mid highs, and then your highs. So depending on the frequency bands here, it may compress it more or less. So say for instance, you had too much low end and you wanted to cut that out, you can compress that a bit more. Or if you wanted to bring up a little bit of the mid highs because your speaking voice just doesn't quite cut through, you could do that as well. So it's a good way for you to, really EQ your audio waveforms. So we have a whole bunch of presets and stuff like that here. We'll just go through to, between Broadcast and Pop Master, which are two of my favorite presets when dealing with dialogue. So we'll go back into our editing workspace, and then we'll go ahead and rewind this a little bit. And then I will turn this off, and then I will bring it back in. So let's begin. Little webcam test for the tutorial video that I'm about to record. So I have no compression, no low cut, no nothing on my Zoom H2n mic. I'm just talking straight into the mic pretty much. It's about... And now we're gonna see how the Pop Master changes it. So the Broadcast one is a general, very even multi-band compression, but the Pop Master has a very big emphasis on boosting the vocal parts. So we'll go ahead and hear the difference. So it'll first be off, and then we'll turn it back on. About a foot away from me, and sorry about the bump. But anyway, the mic is about a foot away from me, kind of angling at the left side, so it'd be this side right here. It's about here-ish, about a foot away from my mouth, and I'm just talking directly at you guys. So that way you guys get a nice little test clip, and you can hear the difference between... Okay, so you guys probably heard there's a definite boost in the high mids to highs, so that way you can hear the dialogue a little bit better versus when it's non-compressed. And we'll just go in and give you guys a basic gist of what these do. So as you can see in the different frequency bands here, you have basically the same thing that was on the single band. You have your threshold, gain, ratio, attack, release, same basic things. And then you can either have it solo it, so that way it only compresses, in this case, the lows, or you can just have it bypass to where it doesn't compress this at all. So that's a neat little thing. So if you only wanted to compress a specific frequency band, you can do that. And right here you can see the crossover frequencies. So this is where the frequency band controls kick in. So for the lows you have the 0 to, in this case, 120. And then for the mids you have the 120 to 2000, and then 2000 to 10,000 for the highs. And then over here you also have a limiter, which is really good if you're worried about compressing it too much and it starting to peak. You can put a limit on the amount of overall gain and loudness that you have here. So this is definitely very useful as well, but in the interest of safety, I always put a little gain cut in here as well. So usually -3 or -5, like I said, works pretty good. You don't have to worry about it too much, and then you can compress to your heart's content for the most part. So there you go. So yeah, that was my tutorial on how to use compression in Adobe Premiere Pro. And if you guys would like to learn a little something about Premiere Pro or Adobe Audition, feel free to leave me a little something in the comments down below in the boopity-boops, and I will be sure to make a video on it. So with that said, this is the Andy San, signing out for now, and as always, we'll see you next time. Catch you later, guys. Bye.